Well, we are finally at the time when we get to stitch this wonderful fox. Now, this fox might be the main reason you are wanting to make this hoop. And, along with that excitement might also come some intimidation. And let me tell you, that is perfectly normal. Everyone feels intimidation. I felt intimidated when I started stitching this. I've already done one. Since it comes in two sizes, I've already stitched this guy, and I was very intimidated to start, let me tell you. And anybody that, whether they've been stitching for a week or 3 months or 15 years, if they say that they are never intimidated, then I don't think they're telling the truth, honestly, because, sometimes you just feel a little overwhelmed before you start. But don't worry about that, because I got you, okay? I am going to break this down for you into separate parts, and each part I will take you through step by step. In the PDF version, there are step-by-step photos that will, still photos, so you can see what I did for each step, and I tell you what threads to use and how many strands and what to put where and the direction of the stitching. So, the concept, the technique for this fox is not difficult. It's just a bunch of straight stitches is all it is, in colors that are built up, So don't worry if you're feeling intimidated, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. I mentioned that we were going to take this in parts. So the first part we're going to do is the body, right here on the left side. And I also mentioned that, there's really not a fancy technique for this. There's not a quote stitch for it. It's really just about laying in stitches and then laying in colors and then building up those colors until the whole thing has kind of a 3D effect. It is sort of related to needle painting, but it's not the needle painting that we have done, or like the needle painting we did in the leaves over here with one strand, or, even this was not that, super detailed. But, there's that needle painting with one strand of thread, and it's, you want to be really careful about where you come up and go down, and choosing colors that blend seamlessly together so you get a smooth blend. That's not what this is about. This is a more impressionistic kind of needle painting. If you're familiar with painting, there's hyper-realistic painting where it looks like you're looking at a photograph, and then there's impressionism, which is, if you stand back from it, it's really just a bunch of dots that when you look up close, it just looks like dots. When you stand back, it looks like a photo, or it looks like the, whatever whatever the image is. This is similar. We're just using straight stitches, and when you stand back from it, it looks like, the fur on a fox. Now, I mentioned shadows and, building up. So here is a, you can't quite see that, can you? All right, so here is a quick sort of colored pencil drawing that I did for myself when I was deciding where I wanted to put which color. I think up here you can see I just laid in quickly some, with some pencil, where the sort of contours of the fox were going to be. But then I put it in color, and that really helped me. This will be available in the PDF, so you'll be able to see this exact same thing. It's not super technical. It's not like I say put, number 1, 2, 3 right here and number 4, 5, 6 right here. It's not quite that specific, but this will kind of help you get an idea about, shadows and how it can help you build up this fur to look like it's an animal's body. All right, let's get down to actually stitching. I'm going to start over here with the body. I am using 3 strands of, this is 820, and even if I don't say every thread color in this video, I probably won't, but all of that is listed in the PDF. It'll say do this color and then this many strands of this color and whatever. There's also a pattern that shows you the direction of the stitching. You don't want to go crossways when all the fur is flowing this way and it's kind of in curves. So anyway, I like to start with the shadows. So I'm picking, this isn't black, but I want the shadows to have blues and purples in them, which that also builds up some really interesting colors. And so let me see. I decided on what are the darkest areas on this fox. So like right here, we're like behind this sort of idea of a leg, right over here on the back side, and under here and under here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to start laying in some some straight stitches. I am not trying to fill up every space solidly with each color. That's going to be a repeating theme, because by the time I add all, if I filled every space in with every color solidly, it would be, first of all, I'd cover up everything and it would just be too many stitches. So I am putting in just some spaced out stitches of each color. And let me see, I'm going to put a few, what did I do? I put just a few up here. I'm always thinking about light and shadow. Like if the sun was shining on this fox, where would the shadows be? And where would the, where would the areas that are behind another area, or towards the back? Where are the light areas? So like right here, like you'd think this is his, this is the fur, but this goes to the backs and this is up here at the top. So I'm going to put in a few dark stitches here. And you don't really have to sit there and try to figure out where the shadow areas are and where the highlights are. I've already done that for you. But if you want to think about it while you're stitching, it can maybe help you in maybe a future project. Even as we're laying these in, I know that some of these stitches are going to get covered up, and that's fine. That one doesn't really go there, but it'll be fine. So behind the top of his leg here, I'm going to add in some stitches. And, I don't have the direction, the pattern that has the directions that'll be in the PDF with me right in front of me. So I might be doing some of these a little bit different. Honestly, I can't remember on this leg if these stitches, if I went, around the leg or if I went up the body. I think I went up the body, but if it's a little bit different than you see on that, that's fine. This technique, even though I've already done it once, there's no way, and I would ever be able to completely perfectly recreate what I did the first time, and that's kind of the joy of it. It is very sort of intuitive and kind of just appears as you start to work on it, but it's not like I can put every single stitch at the exact same place that I did if I did it twice. And now I'm going to hop down here. It's really dark under here. This is kind of a foot. It's not like, it's just the impression of a foot, but I'm just going to. And you may be noticing that I am not paying attention to whether, well, particularly now, it doesn't really matter, but it doesn't even matter later. With regular needle painting, there's a direction. You come up in the stitches you've already made, and then you go down, and this just doesn't matter. I just go all over the place. I go one direction, then I go another direction. And I'm not even knotting my thread in between. I'm just, because this is a darker fabric, like when I stitched here and I think I jumped down to here. So I've got a long strand of dark blue thread behind the fabric. Well, it doesn't matter because this is dark fabric. And this will all be covered with stitching. Even if I was stitching on white fabric, that thread behind there is not going to be seen. So I do not have to stitch this section, knot it, cut it, start over like I would, in a different type of pattern. I'm just not worried about that. It's all going to be covered with stitching. So in light of that, when you cut the thread to put on your needle, you might want to make a particularly long section if you're okay with stitching in, really long, with really long threads, because you are going to be, wasting some of that thread by jumping around, particularly right here where these dark areas are kind of far apart. All right, so I think I will stop there, And I am going to do the next color, which I'm going to put in some of the, I think that, again, I've already written up the instructions for this and what color to use when. I may be doing these in a slightly different order. If so, you know, it's still fine. I still know that I want some dark. So I'm using, this is, I think this is 550. That's the dark purple. Again, 3 strands. I am kind of working them in between the dark blue. I generally try to put pretty much all the stitches I think I'm going to want of a color, but many times I thought I had enough and I ended up coming back and adding more later, which is always fine. It just kind of all adds up to that kind of chaotic color that you might be thinking is just this is not making any sense, but the more you go, the more you stitch, the more colors you get on there, it really does start to work. But as I said, particularly in these early colors, I am leaving space in between the colors. I'm giving it some room to breathe, kind of, if you will. But I am paying attention to the direction, kind of working around that, the way that his body would, his fur would be moving or laying on top of his bones. And as you get lighter and lighter, you start to move outwards from the stuff you've already done, the shadows. And sometimes, you know, you're just going to cover up the stitches you've already stitched, and that's fine. Sometimes, in fact, a lot of times that happens. You know, a lot of this shading, these really dark colors are going, you know, there's a chance they're going to get completely covered up. But you know, it's under there, it provides a nice base, and it does peek through. And I'll talk about this later, but there have been times where I covered up too much of a dark color and I needed to go back in. I just didn't seem like it had enough dimension to it, so I went back and I just put some more dark on top, and that all adds to it as well. I'm gonna hop down here now. Really need to go make some notes about what I did before so I can do it at least similarly to what I did previously for what I'm writing about in the instructions. Okay, so now I didn't want any of the super dark over here, but I am going to add just a little bit of this dark purple under here because, you know, this foot would be near the ground. And, you know, this is not reality, but let's just say this leg is kind of behind this flower. So I'm going to add some dark in around the flower. You know, kind of like, but also if this was just, you know, if he was really sitting there, his leg would have some shadows as it was, you know, near the ground. And the direction on this hind leg is it kind of swoops around this way and goes like that. So I'm kind of starting to, you know, give myself that indication. Also, sometimes these first stitches can help you do that. It can sort of lay in the direction that you want to go. All right, so maybe I'll give one more right here. That was 2 more. All right, now I'm going to go pick up my next color. Well, I went back and looked at my notes about exactly how I stitched it before, and I did not even use that dark purple when I did it the first time. But that is not a big deal. This one will just have some more depth in the shade, in the shadows right there. The next color that I did use after the 820 is this 826. It's a kind of a slate medium blue, but same exact thing. Just put in, well, I don't know why I started there. I should have started at the top. But as I said before, this will start to give some depth to those shadows. And I'll work outwards a little bit. I try to waste as little thread as possible because this is kind of a thread hog by, moving from space to space and not just sort of like carelessly wasting thread, but it is going to use a lot. See how I kind of bring that color up into the shadows or the stitches, the color that I've already done. And I don't think it'll take long for you to kind of see, oh yeah, that is starting to look like something. Now, you might be asking yourself, why does a fox have blue in it? Well, the shadows, if I had just stitched all of this with black, all of these shadow areas with black, it would just look very flat. And I just want some depth with the, the lightness and the darkness of the colors, but also with the color itself. I want some interesting shading to happen. And it really is fun to see these colors all sort of work together and start to look like something. So I know this might start to get a little boring, so I won't show you all 100 stitches of every color. I think hopefully you can get the idea here, but keep referring back to this drawing. In fact, let me look at it myself so I can kind of see where I had more of this blue. I had some right around in there, and then I had a bunch of blue in here where it's shadowed, and then right along the bottom. So let me do that. Let's see. I had some shadows along here on this side. And what that does is it starts to give it dimension, and you use dimension, or you create dimension by light and dark. So I'm going to have it be darker on this side of this leg, and then when I do the leg, I'll have a nice bright, some bright oranges along here, which will make this leg look like it's in front of, the part of the body that's behind it. If you've ever drawn, you're probably familiar with, shading and shadows, and if you haven't ever, spent any time drawing or sketching something, it's a really fun way to start thinking about dimension and how to make things look dimensional. So I want this part at the bottom, I want it to be the darkest part because it's, the closest to the ground, but I am just going to give it a little hint of a little bit of a lighter shade right here. Not a lot. I don't want to, like I said, just completely overwhelm it. But I do know that there's a lot of this blue in here. And now I'll add, there's a little bit of blue down here. Just like that. Now I'll pop up here to this shaded section. I'm not worrying if I'm splitting stitches. You know, sometimes I split a previous stitch, sometimes I take a little more care, like right here, you know, I'm going to try to get it right between those two stitches. But I mean, if I split it, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Some stitches are long, some stitches are short, but this is not, as I said, the traditional, you know, long and short stitch. You know, trying to work so hard to make it, you know, I do think about staggering them, but not like I normally do when I'm thread painting. Okay, I think I might put a few down here. Just a little bit of this, just some blues in here. I want them to peek out amongst all the oranges that I know I'm going to be putting there. Which brings up another point. If I had just filled this leg with just orange, it would be pretty, but it would be a little bit flat. So by adding in some of these, you know, bright colors, this blue, just gives it some life, some vibrancy. All right, so maybe that's enough for that color. All right, let me move on to the next color. Another color you can use to indicate shadows, kind of more medium shadows, is this medium purple. I think this one is 3837. Again, 3 strands. I'm using 3 strands for the body here because I just want it to work up quickly. You know, I don't have to do a lot of delicate, you know, detail work, and I first stitch in a knot. Isn't that awesome? But this is one of those knots. You can see it. I know it's probably not in focus. This is one of those knots that if you just don't pull it tightly, if I put my needle in it and then if I pull on it, can you see that? If I pull gently on one of the sides, then it should just pop right out. And it did. Let's hope that's not an indication of how this whole color is going to go with a bunch of knots. Maybe not. Haha, get it? Maybe not. I realized I wanted the direction over here to be a little more curved around, so I'm just popping in a few of those stitches like that, kind of in a curve. I'm gonna come down in here. So this is exactly the same. I'm not gonna make you watch the whole thing of every single color because this is still kind of building up the shadows. But now I can come into areas that I don't really have any before. So slightly lighter shadows, if you will. This whole area down here with this, you know, foot, it's like I said, it's not a perfectly defined foot like we're going to do these 2 front legs. So it's kind of a little murky down there, I understand. But it'll be fine. Your brain will read it as a leg. Yes. But anyway, like I said, I'm not going to make you watch the whole me stitching every single color because it's really just the same. Okay. So I will go finish this and then show you what it looks like. So there's that color all finished. And before I move on to the next color, I'm going to tell you I forgot previously to go up here and, oh, you can barely see that. Let me bring that down a little bit. Okay, I forgot to do this little triangle up here. See that? Right up here by the face, under the ear. So I went back and I added a little bit of the 826 and the 3837. So that's why you're seeing that there. But anyway, the next color up is 34 and 3 strands again. And I love this color when I start mixing in these colors because it's such a beautiful, it's almost identical, well, it's not identical, it's a little darker than the fabric itself, but it's a beautiful bridge between all of these shadows that we're doing and the oranges that we're about to do here very soon. So you might be thinking, you know, pink, but trust me, it works. And this will be a little bit more critical when we start working with the oranges, but here on the edges, obviously you always want to try to cover up, or you always want to definitely cover up the white lines. But we also want it to look like fur. So when you are doing these, you know, even though these stitches along here are like running this direction, I always make sure on the edges that I kind of have some little, you know, spiky stitches running like out into, you know, out past the edge there. So it looks more like fur, because, you know, fur is spiky on the edges. It's not perfectly smooth. At least that's not the look we're going for. I'm gonna pop in a few of these slightly darker stitches here. A lot of this will be covered up by oranges, but that's okay. All right, so come back down here. So there are times when I am spending a little bit of time to go in between the stitches, so I don't just completely cover up, but you know, really, this goes pretty fast. You're thinking, oh, this is so much ground to cover, and how am I ever going to fill this up with all these stitches, these random stitches? But it actually comes together faster than you think. And it's also really fun because I think I said this before, but to see the colors kind of come to life is really cool. To see the shape of it come to life. Now I know I want some I said the next color after this one is an orange. It's a sort of a dark brown orange, but I think you're going to really, might be strange to start to put an orange in now, but it might feel very kind of jarring. But trust me. All right, so anyway, I'm going to go work on this color a little bit more, and then we'll start in on the oranges. The next color in the lineup is 301, and I told you it was going to be the first orange that we used, kind of a browny orange. And as I said before, I love this color. It's a beautiful bridge between the shading and the oranges. And I've used it in two ways. I've already done a whole bunch here. In fact, I already used up a whole thread, and I've just threaded another length on my needle. But I've used it in two ways. I have used it in sections that didn't have any stitching before that are going to be predominantly orange, like up in here and kind of in the center here. But sort of like we laid in the shadows in these areas, that consider this sort of the, since it's the quote darkest orange of the ones we're going to be using, sort of consider that it's the shadowing of the orange sections. But I've also used it to blend into the stitches we've already done. And something about this color is just so pretty. It just blends really nicely into the 34 and to the purple and even the dark blue. It just really is a beautiful bridge between those really dark colors and that pink into the solid orange areas that we're going to do. So a lot of this might seem really random, but I just started up here and I filled that in, and I spent a lot of time. I've done a lot of stitching with this color because I really want to start filling in those orange areas. I've worked all the way around here, across here, and down here, and then now I'm just kind of finishing up. I don't have that much left to do, but I did run out of thread, so just a few more stitches over here. And like when I'm adding stitches into the already shaded areas, sometimes those stitches are shorter. It's just a little pop of color. Like that. In the, the areas that don't have any stitching yet, it might be longer stitches. but these stitches are so random, all of them anyway. But you're going to be surprised. Sometimes just a little tiny stitch can really give you enough color that just really works. It's like brush strokes. Just like all the other colors, some of this dark orange is going to be covered up, but it still serves its purpose. And on this leg, I'm kind of following that shape around the leg. And I think I can even hop back up in here and add a few more. So there's just a good base for the 3 oranges that are going to come next. The 3 colors of orange that are going to come next. Oh, I also made sure that I hopped out here to the edge. And in fact, I need a couple right in here. So I'm glad I came back up here. Just little short stitches that angle away from the body and just give it that furry look right there. Maybe I can just add one on my way up here because I want to add one. I want to add a few up here. Just a few more in this area. Yeah, one right there. Okay, I think maybe I can always add more later. I might do that, but I think that's enough of that color. I went ahead and stitched the next color, which is 921. Again, 3 strands. And, you know, you didn't need to watch me do all that. It's just filling in, you know, like I said, all the spaces that hadn't been filled in yet and kind of blending the darker sections in with that color. I also came back and added a little bit more of 826. It's that blue color because I didn't have enough of it in through here. I didn't have quite enough of it right along here across the top of this leg because it was kind of blending into the rest. So I wanted a little bit more blue right there to make this leg stand out from the body behind it. But I really love that blue, having just a little bit of that blue. I didn't use it for shadowing right here. I did use it for, I just like that pop of blue coming through all these oranges. And yes, some of it will get covered up, but a little bit of it will peek out all the way through the body. So I love that. Now, the next color I'm going to use is number 720. Again, 3 strands. And this is a wonderful orange. Love this orange. It is a strong orange. So when I come through and stitch all of this, you can decide how much of this really intense, I mean, it's not like fluorescent orange, but it is an intense orange compared to these kind of slightly more muted brownish oranges. It's a lovely color, looks great, and it really gives a nice pop through all of this, but it does have some strength to it. So you decide how much of this orange you want. And I won't make you watch me stitch this whole thing, but, and you know, what we're doing now is just gradually going lighter and lighter because the next color we're going to use is the lightest orange we have. And don't get me wrong, this orange is beautiful. I love it. And it blends very well, but it is very orange. And, you know, since we're stitching a fox that has a lot of orange on it, that's, you know, we need that. And I did want to talk to you briefly about right up here, this area up here against his, what's going to be his white chest fur right here. Just, you know, stitch up to it. You can stitch over that line. We're going to sort of, later on, we're going to come back with some white stitches and stitch into this edge a little bit. But just, you know, just fill that in as best as you can. The tiny edge of it will be covered up, but just make sure you have enough orange there to just fill it in. I might come back. You know, that is just so orange. There's no shading or blue or anything. I'm going to come back here in a minute. I'm going to add a little bit more definitely of the 826, the blue that I just talked about. I think I'm going to add a little bit more of the number 34 because that's just looking very flat to me, whereas all the rest of it has this beautiful, you know, mix, this wonderful blending of all these colors. And that right there to me is just looking a little bit boring. You know, it's one of those things that if you didn't do it, no one's going to be like, oh, that section looks awful. It's just to your taste. Sometimes you just have to step back a little bit and take a look at something and decide what you want to do. But anyway, this is straightforward again. I'm just going to add pops of this bright orange into the sections that were a little bit darker, had a little bit more of the shading colors in it, and then I'm going to add a little bit more of it in here in this center section that is not filled in a lot yet. So that's what I'm going to do for this step. Here I am with the last orange we're going to use on the body. It's 3853, 3 strands again, and I just worked it all the way through here. I have a little bit left to do here, and this one is the lightest orange, so I really just use it to kind of fill in a lot in here, which is the, you know, sort of the part where the sun would have hit the body, you know, it's sort of at the top. And I don't mean the top up here, I mean like the, you know, the roundness of the body. But I really just use it kind of also just where you want a little bit of sparkle. It just brightens everything up and just gives it a little bit of, I don't know, sparkle is the best word I can think of for it. So I think that's it for the body. I did come back and add some of that blue up here and a little bit of that 34, that dark pink. And I really like the way that looks too. So I think the body's finished. I hope you found that helpful to see me work all the way through that and see that it's really no mystery. It's just sort of building up the colors as you go. And that's one of the things I love so much about it is at first it doesn't look like much, but as you keep going, you start to see these shapes and the colors all blend together. And that's what makes it so much fun to do. The legs of the fox are really very straightforward, especially after the slightly more complicated body that we've already done. But you're just going to follow the direction of the leg, just do vertical, you know, vertical stitches around the sides, curve them a little bit at the top, and then more vertical on this side, fill in that side. And so now I'm just going to take you through the order of the colors, 3 strands for the legs. So here's the black, and here is 820, the darkest blue. And this is 826, that light blue. And finally, the dark purple, which is 550. That dark purple is really important because it was just too big of a jump from this light blue to the really, really dark blue. It just didn't blend. So I just gave quite a bit, or stitched quite a bit of this dark purple on top of the light blue and a little bit into the dark blue. And that color really helped bridge the super light blue and the super dark blue. Now we're just going to do the little tips of the feet and we'll be through with the legs. I basically just satin stitched the white, 3 strands of white for the tip of the little feet. And because they need just a little bit of grounding, otherwise they're just so bright white, they need to have, and everything else has got multiple colors in it, I am putting in just a few stitches, small stitches right along the, whoops, I pulled up a, there we go, just right on the little bottom part of the feet. Also kind of makes it look like toes, but they're little tiny stitches, and this is 826. Like that. Maybe put one right there. I hope this one's not a mistake. No, that's fine. Okay, so there's the feet. I did also want to mention that right in here in between the legs, I totally forgot to do that section when I was working on the body. So I just filled in between the legs, and it's just, I put a few stitches of the darkest blue, 820, a few of 34, the darkest pink, a little bit of this 826, this blue color, And then I think I used the two darkest oranges because I wanted this, because the legs are dark. I mean, technically that area would be in shadow and it would be really dark, but because it's right next to the really dark legs and I really want the legs to stand out, I made sure to put enough orange in there that there was orange right next to the black part so that the legs really have a nice edge to them. So I think, like I said, 820, the dark blue, 34, the dark pink, 826, the blue, and then the 301, and I believe it was 921 for the orange in between the legs. So anyway, the legs are done now. The ears are very straightforward, so I'm not going to make you watch me make all these straight stitches. You all know how to do that. But I will take you through the colors. I'm using 3 strands for all of the colors on the ears. And the first step is to put in the black along these top edges and some black on the inside here. Out that black in the center with 826. Next is 3 strands of white. And for the white, fill it in pretty solidly. I mean, you don't have to completely cover it like you were trying to do satin stitch. But, you know, make the ears pretty white all the way through. And I'm going to say here again, I think I said it earlier, but I'll say it again. You know, for these stitches, it does not matter if you change directions. Like if usually I'm a stickler for not changing directions, particularly if I'm doing satin stitch. So, I mean, if you come up and go down, up, down, up, down. Here, I don't care. Sometimes I came up here and went down here, and then I just jumped over here and went down and jumped over here and went over. That doesn't matter this time because that saves thread, and these stitches don't have to be so close together, so it's easy to jump over just a little bit and go back the other direction like that. I hope you understand what I'm talking about there. So anyway, don't worry about having to be so super precious about where you come up or go down. Just get those stitches laid in there to cover the ears pretty well. Now I've added just a few stitches on the upper part in the white section with 826 and the lightest purple 155, I think it is. Yeah, that's it. Just right up in here. And now the last thing I'm going to do is add a touch of orange, and that's really going to make these ears come to life. And then lastly for the ears, just drop in some 921. I used 2 strands for this because that's just the one I had handy. If you've got a needle already threaded with 3 strands, that would be fine too. But I just used 2 strands. And oh, I just realized I forgot to stitch the above the top of the ear here on this right side. But so stitch a line along the top of the ear and then drop in a few stitches here and then along this kind of outside edge, a little heavier here towards the bottom. Same thing over here, and now I need to go do the top of the ear so they will match. Even though it's not technically the ears, I'm just going to talk quickly about this little area between the ears. And there's 2 little sections. There's a section across the top that's darker, and I just put in a few stitches of 550, that's the dark purple, 34, that's the dark pink, and then just a couple of stitches of 301, which is the darkest orange. And now I'm just going to fill in there's a little spot here and a little spot here. I'm just going to fill in right there with 720, that's that bright orange, and 3853, that's the lightest orange. So that's all there is to do between the ears.